Millionaires mocked a woman covered in grease in front of a pristine supercar until one of their daughters stepped forward, and everything changed forever. On that muggy morning in Chicago, business at Premium Motors continued as usual. The impeccably clean floor reflected the cold ceiling lights, the imported cars gleamed like rare jewels, and the smell of leather and premium gasoline hung in the air. Among suited clients, uniformed mechanics, and immaculate receptionists, an unusual murmur began to form. As she walked through the glass door, a woman attracted attention for reasons quite different from what that ostentatious environment displayed. Her worn boots left discreet marks on the marble floor, her oil-stained t-shirt stood out from the tailored blazers, and her skin, marked by hours of work, carried in sweat and grease a silent resume that few there were willing to read. It was Maya Johnson, 32, a mechanical engineer who graduated with honors from the University of Chicago, known in some technical circles for solving problems that others gave up on. That day, she wasn't there for show or to do automotive tourism. She came looking for a part ordered for the repair of a truck that supported an entire family's income in the South Side. To the cold gazes that scanned her from head to toe, she seemed out of place, almost an intruder in restricted territory. The environment, designed to receive millionaires and super machine enthusiasts, didn't bend for stories of effort or calloused hands. A receptionist with red lipstick and a rehearsed smile approached with the expression of someone who wishes to remove an unwanted object. "Can I help you?" she asked, maintaining a safe distance, as if the grease on Maya's clothes might stain her impeccable uniform. "I'm here to pick up an order. Ferrari 458 Italia engine part," Maya replied, trying to ignore the sideways glances she attracted. "I spoke with Carl last week." The receptionist narrowed her eyes as if trying to fit that figure into some known category. "Are you sure it's this dealership? We only serve owners and—" "I'm sure," Maya interrupted firmly but without raising her voice. "Order number 78453, paid in advance. You can check." The woman walked away with quick steps, leaving Maya alone in the center of the main showroom. Discreet laughter sounded from the corners. A group of businessmen, seated in the VIP area drinking espresso from porcelain cups, commented in purposely audible volume. "She must have gotten the wrong address. The truck garage is on the expressway," one of them said, drawing laughs from his companions. Maya took a deep breath. It wasn't the first time she had faced this kind of situation, and it probably wouldn't be the last. She kept her eyes fixed on the trophy cases that decorated one of the walls, deliberately ignoring the comments. That's when a deep, imposing voice cut through the environment. "What do we have here?" August Mitchell, 53, owner of Premium Motors and a well-known figure in Chicago's elite circles, approached with calculated steps. The custom Italian suit and Swiss watch completed the image of success that he meticulously cultivated. On his face, a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "Mr. Mitchell," the receptionist hurried to explain, "this lady came to pick up a part. We're checking if there hasn't been some mistake." August examined Maya from top to bottom without disguising it. The smile that formed on his lips carried a dangerous gleam. "And for which Ferrari would this part be? I don't remember having clients with that profile." The businessmen in the corner laughed louder, now that they had the validation of the owner himself. "The part isn't for me," explained Maya, holding August's gaze. "It's for a private client who hired me for specialized service." "Private client?" August repeated with exaggerated surprise. "And who would this mysterious client be who prefers to trust their cars to a backyard garage instead of our certified specialists?" The tension was growing. Employees stopped what they were doing to watch. Maya realized she was at the center of an unplanned spectacle, but one from which she couldn't simply walk away. At stake was not just her pride, but her professional reputation. "My clients prefer discretion, Mr. Mitchell, and results." August's smile faltered for an instant, but soon returned wider. "Results? Interesting. Come with me. I want to show you something." Without waiting for a response, he walked toward the service area of the dealership. Maya hesitated for a moment, but followed him, aware of the gazes that accompanied her every step. At the back of the main garage, isolated in a special space, a red Ferrari gleamed under directed lights. The 488 GTB model was one of the most coveted of the brand, with its twin-turbo V8 engine and aggressive lines that promised extraordinary performance. "Beautiful, isn't it?" asked August, gesturing to the car. €470,000, practically new and completely useless at the moment. Maya observed the vehicle with genuine interest, noticing details that would escape less trained eyes. 3 weeks trying to solve a problem that no one can identify, continued August. The engine fails at high RPMs, loses power without explanation. We've changed sensors, checked the injection, updated the software, nothing. "Why are you showing me this?" asked Maya, although she already suspected the answer. August smiled now to an audience that was forming around them. The businessmen, employees, and some clients observed the scene with growing curiosity. "You talk about results, I'm offering an opportunity to demonstrate them." He made a theatrical pause. "Fix this car, identify and solve the problem that my mechanics couldn't, and not only will you get the part you came for, but also a bonus of $50,000. Murmurs ran through the group. The proposal was as unexpected as the amount mentioned. "And if I can't," asked Maya, keeping her voice firm, "then you'll publicly admit that this type of work isn't for you. That precision mechanics is for real professionals, not for adventurers." The provocation was crystal clear. It wasn't just about a car. It was a judgment about competence, gender, and social class, all wrapped in an apparently professional challenge. As Maya considered the proposal, a discreet movement caught her attention. Leaning against one of the garage pillars, a teenager observed the scene with unusual intensity. The dark, intelligent eyes followed each movement, each expression, as if studying a complex equation. She wore the uniform of an elite private school, but her posture indicated more interest in the mechanics around her than in the social drama unfolding. It was Isabella Mitchell, 16, August's daughter. Her presence there seemed out of place, but no one dared to comment. Maya noticed how the girl looked at the Ferrari, not with superficial admiration, but with technical curiosity. "How much time would I have?" asked Maya, turning to August. "Until the end of the day," he answered, with a smile of someone already celebrating victory. "My schedule is full tomorrow. I can't waste more time on experiments." 12 hours to solve a problem that specialists couldn't in 3 weeks. The challenge was absurd by design, a trap elaborated to ensure failure. Maya approached the Ferrari, examining the body with experienced eyes. She ran her hand over the hood, feeling the temperature of the metal. She leaned to observe the interior, the dashboard configurations. Each gesture precise, calculated. "I need tools, access to the diagnostic computer and the vehicle's maintenance history," she said finally. August gave a short laugh. "Give her what she asks for," he ordered the employees. "I want everyone as witnesses to this BAS experiment." While the mechanics, visibly uncomfortable, gathered the requested tools, Maya noticed that Isabella had discreetly approached, keeping herself on the periphery of the group, but close enough to observe everything. The challenge was set, and in the coming hours, much more than the fate of a Ferrari would be decided in that luxury garage in Chicago. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The hostile looks didn't intimidate Maya. Throughout her professional life, she had faced similar situations. She remembered her graduation from the University of Chicago, when she was the only woman among the top 10 students in the mechanical engineering course. In the official photo, she looked like an editing error, a presence that shouldn't be there. Then came internships in traditional garages, where tools mysteriously disappeared from her hands, where instructions were deliberately omitted, where each success was treated as luck and each mistake as confirmation of incompetence. While organizing the tools that had been given to her, many of them handed reluctantly by the mechanics of premium motors, Maya thought of her father, Sebastian Johnson. He, a self-taught mechanic from rural Michigan, taught her from an early age that engines have personality, speak their own language to those who know how to listen. "A good mechanic is like a doctor," he would say. "You need to listen to the patient before prescribing the medicine." August Mitchell observed from a distance, conversing with his businessman friends, occasionally glancing in Maya's direction, always followed by ironic smiles shared with the group. For them, this was entertainment, an amusing break in the routine of business and ostentation. "Are you sure about this?" asked Robert Baker, the dealership's technical manager, in a low voice approaching August. "If she damages the client's car, she won't touch anything essential without supervision," replied August without disguising his condescending tone. "It's just a show to brighten the day. At most, she'll do a superficial diagnosis and give up when she realizes it's beyond her capability." The manager didn't seem convinced, but nodded and walked away. Like many there, he was torn between ethical discomfort and the need to keep his job. Maya was now focused on the diagnostic computer. The record showed multiple attempted solutions, part replacements, parameter adjustments. Almost a month of fruitless work, signed by experienced and expensive technicians. The failure remained the same. At speeds above 180 km/h, the engine suddenly lost power, returning to normal only when the RPM significantly decreased. "Temperamental Ferrari," she muttered to herself, absorbing every detail from the previous, her reports. "They've tried everything." The soft voice beside her almost made her jump. Isabella had silently approached and was now standing a few steps away, observing the screen with genuine interest. "They even replaced the injection module last week," the teenager continued. "It made no difference." Maya studied the girl's face for a moment. There was no disdain in her expression, only curiosity and perspicacious intelligence. "You seem to understand the subject," commented Maya, returning to the computer. Isabella shrugged in a gesture that seemed rehearsed to demonstrate indifference, but her eyes sparkled. "I like to observe. I spend a lot of time here waiting for my dad." Maya nodded without taking her eyes off the screen. She noticed that August was now watching them more attentively, his expression divided between curiosity and discomfort with his daughter's approach. "Isabella," he called. "Come here, please." The girl hesitated for a moment, looking from Maya to her father. "Coming," she replied, but didn't move immediately. Instead, she leaned slightly and whispered, "They didn't check the secondary cooling system. Nobody ever looks at that." Before Maya could respond, Isabella walked away with quick steps toward her father. August placed a protective arm around his daughter's shoulders, as if wanting to create a physical barrier between her and the intruder, and led her away from the work area. Intrigued by the teenager's observation, Maya began to check the maintenance, records regarding the cooling system. As Isabella had suggested, there was no mention of detailed verifications in that specific system. It was a thin lead, but worth investigating. As Maya prepared for a more direct inspection of the vehicle, she noticed that the atmosphere in the garage had changed. The open laughter and mocking comments had given way to conversations in low voices. Some mechanics now observed with professional attention, perhaps curious about her approach, perhaps waiting for a mistake they could point out. Maya started the Ferrari's engine, letting it run at idle. The perfect rumble echoed through the garage, attracting even more looks. A good sign. The problem didn't manifest at low RPM. She closed her eyes for a moment, concentrating only on the sound, the subtle vibrations, the cadence of the engine. When she opened them again, she saw that Robert Baker, the technical manager, was observing her with a less hostile expression, almost respectful. "Can I rev it in place?" asked Maya. Robert hesitated, looked at August, who nodded from a distance, and then agreed. "I'll control the RPM gradually," explained Maya, maintaining a professional tone. "I need to feel how the car responds at different ranges." The manager positioned himself in the driver's seat, while Maya remained leaning over the exposed engine. As the RPM increased, she observed each component, each connection, each movement. Her eyes scanned tubes, cables, sensors, looking for anomalies that might escape a less experienced observer. "Stop," she said suddenly, when the tachometer marked 5,000 RPM. Robert obeyed immediately. Maya approached a specific section of the cooling system near the turbo intercooler. With precise movements, she checked the connections, the pressure, the temperature. "I need a more powerful flashlight," she requested. One of the mechanics, a young man who until then had kept his distance, hurried to assist her. Maya illuminated. A specific point, narrowing her eyes to see better. "There," she murmured. "Do you see it?" Robert and two other mechanics approached, curious. At the illuminated point, a small irregularity in the weld of a connection was visible. Almost imperceptible, but to trained eyes a possible point of failure. "This could cause a minimal leak under high pressure," explained Maya. "Not enough to trigger alarms or cause immediate overheating, but enough to compromise performance at high speeds." Robert frowned, leaning to see better. "We checked that area 3 times, he argued, but his voice lacked conviction. "Not like this," replied Maya. "The problem only manifests when the system is under maximum pressure, and even then it's intermittent." By this point, a small group of mechanics had formed around the car. The initial hostility was giving way to professional interest. Even some of the clients, including August's businessman friends, approached to observe. "That would explain the power loss at high speed," agreed one of the more experienced mechanics. "If the cooling system partially fails, the onboard computer reduces power to protect the engine." August Mitchell, who until then had remained at a distance, approached with slow steps, bringing Isabella still at his side. "Found the problem?" he asked, his tone now less mocking, more cautious. "I found a problem," corrected Maya. "I still need to verify if it's the only one or the main one." She noticed Isabella's gaze fixed on the point she had just identified. The teenager was biting her lower lip, as if containing a comment or question. "What would be your recommendation?" asked Robert, now adopting a professional tone. "Redo this specific connection and check the entire secondary cooling circuit," replied Maya. "Then test on a dynamometer to simulate high-speed conditions." The manager nodded, thoughtful. "We have the necessary equipment," he said, looking at August as if asking for authorization. August hesitated. What had begun as a staged performance to humiliate an intruder was evolving into something different. His original plan to expose Maya's incompetence in front of friends and employees was at risk of transforming into the opposite. "Let's first verify if she's right," he finally said. "Robert, organize whatever is necessary." While the team mobilized to prepare the equipment, Maya noticed that Isabella had moved away from her father and was now discreetly examining some tools near the workbench. There was something in the girl's posture, in the way her fingers touched the tools with familiarity, that suggested more than casual curiosity. Maya approached her, pretending to look for a tool. "How did you know?" she asked in a low voice. "About the secondary cooling system." Isabella quickly looked at her father, ensuring he was distracted talking with his friends, and then replied in the same discreet tone. "Nobody notices me when I'm here. I hear everything, see everything. They never consider the possibility of it being something so basic." "There's nothing basic about it," corrected Maya with a slight smile. "It was a very perceptive observation." Isabella's cheeks blushed slightly at the compliment. "My dad doesn't know, but sometimes I come here after school. Ryan, the night shift mechanic, lets me observe while he works." She paused, as if considering whether she should continue. "He taught me some things." Before they could continue the conversation, Robert approached, informing them that the equipment was ready. It was time to test Maya's theory. If she was right, the first step to solving the Ferrari enigma would be taken. If she was wrong, the humiliation planned by August would follow its course. As she walked back to the car, Maya felt a mix of professional confidence and apprehension. She had identified a real problem, of that she had no doubts. But was this the only problem? And more importantly, could she solve everything in the impossible deadline she had been given? She looked at Isabella, who now observed everything with even greater intensity. There was something special about that girl, a natural talent that transcended casual interest. And for some reason that she didn't yet fully understand, Maya felt that this unlikely encounter could be significant for both of them. The testing room at Premium Motors was a separate environment. Acoustically isolated from the rest of the dealership, Equipped with cutting-edge technology and restricted access, it was here that the most exclusive vehicles received specialized attention. The dynamometer, a machine capable of simulating real driving conditions without the car moving, occupied the center of the space. High-resolution monitors displayed dozens of different parameters in real time: temperature, pressure, RPM, torque, fuel consumption. For August Mitchell, that space represented much more than a technical investment. It was the symbol of his trajectory, of the distance he had traveled since the times when, still a teenager, he delivered parts by bicycle through the streets of Cicero. The son of a metalworker from the periphery who now controlled an automotive empire hadn't arrived there by chance or luck. Each step had been calculated, each opportunity maximized, each obstacle transformed into a stepping stone. While observing Maya and the technical team preparing the Ferrari for the tests, August relived moments of his own history. He remembered when he bought his first garage, a precarious warehouse in the east side of Chicago. How he worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, for years. How he learned to identify opportunities where others saw only problems. And mainly how he developed an almost predatory instinct for business, eliminating competitors and absorbing their clients. "Dad, can I stay to watch the tests?" Isabella's voice brought him back to the present, his only daughter, his greatest achievement, and, at the same time, his greatest challenge. As intelligent as she was stubborn, as determined as she was unpredictable. "Isn't it a bit late?" "You have school early tomorrow," he replied, consulting his wristwatch. "Please," insisted Isabella, with that look she always used when she wanted something. "It's just a physical education class, and this is much more educational." August sighed. He knew he should set limits, as his wife Christina always demanded. But he also knew that his daughter's curiosity wasn't something to be simply repressed. It was part of what made her special. "All right, but only until we finish this stage," he conceded. "Then straight home." Isabella's smile lit up her face in a way that reminded August of Christina in her youth. The same combination of intelligence and sweetness that had conquered him 20 years ago. "We're ready to start," announced Robert, interrupting the moment between father and daughter. Maya positioned herself near the monitors, focused on the information that began to appear on the screens. The Ferrari, now attached to the dynamometer by special locks, roared like an impatient beast. Robert, at the wheel, gradually increased the acceleration, simulating increasing speeds. 80 kilometers per hour, 100, 100, and 20. With each increment, Maya attentively followed the engine parameters, all normal so far. The sound of the twin-turbo V8 engine filled the room with its mechanical symphony, attracting admiring looks even from those who were already accustomed to that spectacle. 160, 180, that's when it happened. At 183 km/h, exactly as in previous reports, the engine faltered, a subtle hesitation, almost imperceptible to untrained ears, but which the instruments captured perfectly. The power line on the graph plummeted for a second, returning afterward only to fall again a few seconds later. "There," pointed Maya. "Do you see the pattern? It's not a constant failure, it's intermittent, and it coincides with—" She moved her finger to another graph, which showed the pressure in the secondary cooling system. "Exactly when the pressure reaches the maximum peak," completed one of the mechanics, leaning to see better. "We need to check that connection I identified," said Maya. "Robert, can you reduce the speed gradually?" The test continued for a few more minutes with several repetitions to confirm the pattern. Each occurrence reinforced Maya's initial theory. There was a problem in the cooling system that manifested only under specific conditions of temperature and pressure. When the engine was finally turned off, a respectful silence took over the room. The technicians exchanged glances among themselves, some clearly impressed, others still resistant to admit that an outsider had identified something they couldn't in weeks. "Well, it seems we have a direction to follow," said Robert, breaking the silence. There was a different tone in his voice now, a mixture of professional recognition and caution. August approached, maintaining a neutral expression. "How long to fix it?" he asked directly to Maya. "If it's just this connection, a few hours," she replied, "but I need to check the entire circuit to ensure there aren't other compromised points." August nodded, thoughtful. The challenge had been launched as a trap, but now it was transforming into something different. Part of him secretly hoped the problem would be more complex, thus justifying his team's failure. Another part, that of the pragmatic businessman, wanted to see the car working as soon as possible, regardless of who solved the problem. "Let's take a break," he decided. "It's already past 8 in the evening. Robert, organize the team to restart work early tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Maya interrupted, surprised. "The deadline you gave was until the end of today." "Yes, but as you said yourself, the service could take several hours," replied August with a half-smile. "Besides, the garage closes at 10. It wouldn't be prudent to rush precision work." It was an unexpected change, and Maya wasn't sure if it was a positive concession or just a new strategy. Either way, the extra time would be welcome. "Tomorrow then," she agreed. While the team began to dismantle the equipment and prepare the room to close for the day, Maya took the opportunity to review her notes. She had detailed each observation, each parameter, building a mental map of the problem. She was so concentrated that she didn't notice Isabella's approach. "You're really going to fix it, aren't you?" asked the girl with a mixture of admiration and anxiety in her voice. Maya smiled. "I'll do my best." "They never let a woman work here," continued Isabella, lowering her voice. "My dad says it's a very masculine environment." There was a note of frustration in the teenager's words, as if repeating something she had heard many times and never agreed with. "And you? What do you think?" asked Maya, genuinely interested. Isabella looked around, making sure her father was distant, talking with Robert. "I think it's ridiculous. Half the clients who come here barely know the difference between a combustion engine and an electric one, but She paused, as if choosing her words. "I understand how things work, I always have." There was something moving in the way Isabella spoke, a contained passion that reminded Maya of herself in adolescence. That same internal certainty, that same fascination with mechanisms and gears, that same frustration upon realizing that the world wasn't prepared to accept her abilities. "Isabella!" August's voice cut the moment. "It's time to go." The girl made a quick grimace, visible only to Maya. "I have to go," she said, with evident reluctance. Then, almost on impulse, she added, "Can I come tomorrow? To help? To observe?" "Fine. By me," replied Maya, "but I think that depends on your father." Isabella nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. She walked away toward August, but not without casting a last look at the Ferrari, a look that contained as much desire as determination. While gathering her own things to leave, Maya was approached by Robert. "Where did you learn to work with cars like this?" he asked in a tone that, although still reserved, no longer carried the initial hostility. "In practice," replied Maya. "I studied mechanical engineering, but what I know about Ferrari, I learned by fixing one that no one else wanted to touch, an old model, abandoned after an accident. Here in Illinois." "Yes, in Evanston. The previous owner gave up after 3 specialized garages, said it was a lost cause. I bought it for a fraction of the value, rebuilt it piece by piece, and sold it for 4 times what I invested." Robert raised his eyebrows, visibly impressed. "And now you have your own garage?" "I have a space," corrected Maya. "It's not quite a garage in the traditional sense. I work mainly with specific cars, complex cases that others can't solve." The manager nodded, as if finally fitting pieces of a puzzle together. "The car you mentioned earlier, for which you came to get the part." "It's an old Volvo," explained Maya, "from a client's father, the family's only asset, used for transporting goods. Without it, they lose their only source of income." Robert was silent for a moment, as if processing the information. "I'll set aside the part you came to get," he finally said. "It will be available for pickup tomorrow, regardless of the result of the work on the Ferrari." It was a small gesture, almost insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but it represented a subtle change, a concession, a tacit recognition. "Thank you," replied Maya simply. From across the room, August observed the interaction with an indecipherable expression. At his side, Isabella spoke animatedly, gesturing with enthusiasm, probably trying to convince him of something. The relationship between father and daughter was complex, perceptible even at a distance. There was evident love, but also tension, unverbalized expectations, conflicting desires. When finally everyone had left and the main lights were turned off, leaving only the security lighting, Maya took one last look at the red Ferrari. The T. Car seemed different now, less a status symbol and more a concrete technical challenge, a problem to be solved, a mechanical puzzle waiting for the right solution. As she walked to the exit, Maya couldn't help but think about Isabella. There was something about the girl that touched her deeply, perhaps because she saw in her a reflection of her own struggles. Or perhaps because, unlike her own youth, Isabella was still at a crossroads, a moment when the right decisions could make all the difference. The night security guard discreetly waved as he opened the door for her. Outside, Chicago pulsed in its characteristic nocturnal rhythm. Lights, honks, the constant movement of a city that never completely slept. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the contrast between the dealership's air conditioning and the muggy summer night. Tomorrow would be a decisive day, not just for the fate of the defective Ferrari, but possibly for something bigger, something she still couldn't completely define. A persistent feeling that this challenge, initially conceived as humiliation, could transform into something very different. With that thought, Maya walked toward the subway station. The next day promised to reveal much more than just the secret of a capricious Italian engine. Morning arrived with Chicago's sky heavy with clouds, promising one of those summer rains that transform the city into a chaos of traffic and flooding. Maya woke up even before the alarm went off, her mind already accelerated with the day's challenges. In her small apartment in Lincoln Park, where she had lived for 4 years, technical books and special tools shared space with minimalist decoration, reflecting a life dedicated more to work than to domestic comfort. While having her coffee, she mentally reviewed the plan for the day. The flaw in the Ferrari's cooling system was real. She had no doubts about that. But something told her there was more to the story. The inconsistencies she had noticed during the tests, small anomalies in the graphs that others might ignore, suggested a more complex problem, or worse, a deliberately created problem. At 8 o'clock sharp, Maya was already at the door of Premium Motors. Unlike the previous day, when she had arrived without notice and been received with disdain, now one of the security guards was waiting for her and led her directly to the technical area. The environment seemed different, less hostile perhaps, because it was early and there were few clients, or perhaps because the news of her preliminary discoveries had already circulated among the employees. Robert Baker was waiting for her in the testing room, with a serious expression. "Good morning," he greeted, extending his hand formally. "I did some additional checks last night after everyone left." Maya raised her eyebrows, surprised at the initiative. "And what did you discover?" Robert hesitated, for a moment, as if measuring his words. "The connection you identified really has a defect in the weld, but that doesn't explain everything." He paused, checking if they were really alone, and then continued in a lower voice. "I found something strange in the maintenance history. Some interventions not registered in the main system, only in manual notes." The technical manager walked to a table in the corner of the room and picked up a folder. Inside, sheets of paper with handwritten notes, diagrams, and numbers. "This car passed through 3 different hands before arriving here," he explained. "The original owner bought it in Italy, then sold it to a collector in Miami, who finally resold it to the current owner here in Chicago. At some point in that trajectory, unauthorized modifications were made." "What kind of modifications?" asked Maya, already suspecting the answer. "Engine chipping to increase power, probably. The kind of thing that voids the warranty and can cause exactly the problem we're seeing." Maya examined the notes carefully. The dates, the service codes, everything indicated an attempt to hide unauthorized interventions. But there was something more, a pattern in the more recent entries that suggested a systematic approach to cover up the original problem instead of correcting it. "Who made these notes?" she asked. Robert took a deep breath. "William Taylor, our former head of the garage. He'd left the company 3 weeks ago, right after this car arrived with the problem. Left of his own accord. Officially, yes. In practice. Robert left. The sentence hanging, the implicit meaning clear. Maya was beginning to understand the real dimension of the problem. It wasn't just a technical defect, but a potential fraud. Someone had illegally modified the car, compromising its integrity, and then tried to cover up the trail when problems began to arise. Does August know about this? Not with certainty, replied Robert. He knows something's wrong, but not the details. William was his protégé, worked here since the inauguration. It was complicated. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of the door opening. August Mitchell entered, followed by Isabella. The contrast between father and daughter was notable. He, impeccably dressed in a charcoal grey suit that exuded power and control. She, in jeans and a simple t-shirt, carrying a school backpack, with an expression that mixed expectation and determination. "I see you started early," commented August, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Any progress?" Robert discreetly closed the folder and put it aside. "We were reviewing yesterday's results," he replied in a professional tone. "Maya had some interesting theories about the cooling system." August nodded, without showing much interest. "Good. The client is anxious. I promised him a definitive answer by the end of the day." Turning to Maya, he added, "The challenge remains. Fix the car today, and the prize is yours." The tone was less provocative than the day before, more pragmatic, as if the question was now purely commercial, no longer a personal test. "I'll do my best," replied Maya, holding his gaze. "Dad," interrupted Isabella, with that mixture of sweetness and firmness that seemed exclusively reserved for August. "Can I stay and help? I've already finished all my school assignments and I don't have class this afternoon." August frowned. "Help? Isabella, this is work for professionals. You can observe if you want, but you won't be directly involved." The expression of disappointment on the teenager's face was instantaneous. "But I can be useful. I already know how to use the diagnostic computer and—" "Isabella," interrupted August in a tone that didn't admit contestation. "We've already talked about this. Mechanics is a hobby, not a career for someone with your potential." The silence that followed was heavy, loaded with a family tension that seemed to have deep roots. Maya and Robert exchanged quick glances, aware they were witnessing a private dynamic. "Fine," yielded Isabella finally. "Can I at least stay and observe?" August sighed, partially yielding. "Just observe, and don't get in anyone's way." With that reluctant concession, he said goodbye and left, mentioning important meetings that awaited him in the office. As soon as the door closed, Isabella let out an audible sigh. "He never takes me seriously," she muttered, more to herself than to the others. Maya exchanged another look with Robert, who nodded discreetly before walking away, giving them a moment of privacy. "Your father is just worried about your future," offered Maya, trying to sound understanding without being condescending. "My future or the future he planned for me," retorted Isabella, with a bitterness surprising for someone so young. "Harvard, Stanford, or Oxford, business, law, or medicine. The rest is a waste of time." Maya smiled, recognizing in those words echoes of conversations she herself had with her family years ago. "You know, my father also didn't want me to be a mechanic," she revealed. "He was a mechanic, knew the hardship of the profession, the prejudices. He wanted me to be a teacher, dignified work for a young lady. And how did you convince him?" "I didn't," admitted Maya. "He died before seeing me graduate, but in his last days, when I showed him an engine I had rebuilt by myself, I saw that gleam in his eyes. That pride he tried to hide." She paused, remembering that moment with a mixture of pain and gratitude. "Deep down, I think he always knew it was my path." Isabella absorbed those words in silence, her young face processing a life experience that wasn't yet hers, but which somehow resonated deeply. "Shall we work?" suggested Maya, breaking the moment before it became excessively emotional. "I have a Ferrari to fix and a challenge to win." Isabella's smile returned, lighting up her face. "What can I do to help?" she asked, already approaching the car. Maya looked at Robert, who monitored the conversation from a distance. He shrugged as if to say, "I'm not responsible for this," but made no move to interfere. "You can help me organize the tools while I plan the approach," replied Maya, handing a list to Isabella. "And tell me more about this William Taylor." The mention of the ex-employee's name made Isabella frown. "William? What does he have to do with this?" "Just curiosity," replied Maya casually. "Robert mentioned that he worked on this car before leaving." Isabella began to separate the requested tools, with an efficiency that revealed familiarity with the process. "He was strange," she commented, lowering her voice, "like really stressed all the time, and he had a lifestyle that didn't match the salary here." "How so?" "New car every year, international trips, brand-name clothes," everyone commented. "My dad said he was just good with investments." Maya nodded, absorbing the information without commenting, another piece fitting into the puzzle. As the morning progressed, Maya worked methodically on the Ferrari's cooling system, replacing not just the defective connection, but checking the entire circuit. Isabella followed each step with absolute attention, occasionally asking perspicacious questions that demonstrated her understanding of the mechanical principles involved. It was during the inspection of the electronic control system that Maya found something even more revealing. A small, non-original module, discreetly connected to the main system. To untrained eyes, it could pass for a common component, but Maya recognized it immediately. "A performance chip," she murmured, "and not one of the legal ones." "What does it do?" asked Isabella, leaning to see better. "It deceives the onboard computer, making it release more power than recommended by the manufacturer. It's like giving stimulants to an athlete. It works for a while, but the long-term wear is inevitable. And would that be causing the problem?" "Not directly," explained Maya, "but in combination with the defect in the cooling system, it creates the perfect scenario for failures. The engine demands more, generates more heat, but the cooling system can't adequately compensate." Robert, who had approached to follow the discovery, let out a long sigh. "That explains a lot," he commented, "including why our conventional solutions didn't work." "Who would install something like this?" asked Isabella. "Someone who wanted to impress without caring about the long-term consequences," replied Maya. "Or someone who wanted to sell an improved car to a buyer who doesn't understand the implications." The three remained silent for a moment, contemplating the ramifications of the discovery. It wasn't just a technical defect now. It was a clear case of unauthorized modification that compromised the vehicle's integrity and, potentially, constituted commercial fraud. "I need to inform your father," said Robert finally, addressing Isabella. "And the client?" asked Maya. "The client is complicated," replied Robert, choosing his words carefully. "An influential politician, not very fond of technical explanations. He just wants the car working, and quickly." "I understand," said Maya, although her tone suggested otherwise. The ethics of the situation were, at minimum, questionable. While Robert walked away to call August, Maya continued the work, now with a clear objective: remove the unauthorized chip and recalibrate the system to the original factory specifications. It was a delicate process, requiring knowledge of both the hardware and software involved. "I can help with that," offered Isabella surprisingly. "I know how to use the calibration software. Ryan taught me." Maya hesitated, divided between concern about the possible consequences and recognition of the girl's genuine talent. "Your father wouldn't be happy at all," she warned. "My father isn't here," replied Isabella, with a defiant smile. "And as far as he knows, I'm just observing." The determination in the teenager's eyes was undeniable. Maya recognized in her the same hunger for knowledge, the same need to prove her worth that she herself had felt in her youth. After a moment of reflection, she nodded. "All right, but we'll follow the official protocol to the letter. No shortcuts, no improvisations." "Deal," agreed Isabella, already positioning herself in front of the diagnostic computer with a confidence that many experienced technicians didn't demonstrate. The following hours were of intense and meticulous work. While Maya took care of the physical aspects, removing the chip, checking connections, replacing compromised components, Isabella focused on the digital part, adjusting parameters, restoring reference values, monitoring the system's response. The synchronization between them was remarkable, as if they had worked together for years, not hours. They communicated with few words, anticipating each other's needs, sharing a technical understanding that transcended the difference in age and experience. As the work progressed, Maya couldn't help but reflect on the significance of that moment. It wasn't just about fixing a car or winning a challenge. It was about connections between people, between generations, between vocations. Connections that, just like those of a precision engine, needed to be correctly aligned to function in harmony. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The rain that had been threatening since morning finally poured over Chicago in the early afternoon, transforming the sky into a gray curtain and filling the environment with the rhythmic sound of heavy drops against the dealership's roof. Inside the garage, however, the climate was one of absolute concentration. Maya and Isabella were in the final stages of the work, refining adjustments, checking connections, preparing for the decisive test. August. Mitchell returned around 3 in the afternoon, accompanied by Robert, and to everyone's surprise, a middle-aged man with an athletic build and severe expression. Charles Drummond, the client owner of the problematic Ferrari, had insisted on being present for the final verdict. Mr. Drummond greeted August with the deference he reserved only for special clients. As I promised, we're about to solve the problem. I allowed myself to bring in an external specialist for such a particular case. The politician examined the environment with critical eyes, pausing for a moment on Maya, still leaning over the engine, and Isabella, concentrated on the diagnostic computer. The expression on his face mixed skepticism and impatience. "How much longer?" he asked directly to Maya, ignoring the protocol of speaking first with August. "We're preparing for the final test," she replied without being intimidated. 20 more minutes and we'll know if the problem has been completely resolved." "And what was the problem after all?" insisted Drummond, approaching to observe the work up close. Maya exchanged a quick look with Robert, who nodded discreetly, authorizing her to reveal what they had discovered. "We found 2 main issues," she explained, maintaining a professional tone. "A defect in the secondary cooling system, which compromised performance at high speeds, and," she made a strategic pause, "a non-original component installed in the electronic system." Drummond's face hardened. "Non-original? What kind of component?" "A performance enhancement module," replied Maya, carefully observing the man's reaction. "Not authorized by the manufacturer, installed in a way to avoid detection in routine inspections." "Are you telling me someone tampered with my car?" Drummond's voice rose, the indignation evident. "I'm saying that someone modified the vehicle to increase its power beyond factory specifications," corrected Maya calmly. "This, combined with the defect in the cooling system, caused the failures." "So you experienced?" Drummond turned to August, who had slightly paled. "Mitchell, what story is this? I bought this car with the guarantee that it was in original factory condition." "And it was, as far as we knew," August hurried to reply. "Our inspections didn't detect anything irregular when the car arrived." "Inspections under whose responsibility?" asked Drummond, his tone now dangerously controlled. A tense silence settled in the environment. Robert, who until then had kept himself discreetly on the sidelines, stepped forward. "Under the responsibility of William Taylor, our former head of the garage," he replied. "The same one who was handling your case until he decided to leave the company." Drummond's expression oscillated between fury and understanding. "Taylor," he repeated almost to himself, "the one who assured me the car was in perfect condition when I bought it, and then couldn't explain why the damn thing failed every time I went over 180. August intervened, trying to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Drummond, I guarantee this will be thoroughly investigated. If there was any irregularity on the part of one of our employees, Premium Motors will assume full responsibility." "Irregularity," repeated Drummond with a dry laugh. "This has a name, Mitchell. Fraud." While the tension escalated between the Then Maya noticed that Isabella was observing everything with an expression that mixed apprehension and determination. The teenager had discreetly moved away from the computer, but her attentive gaze didn't miss a detail of the scene. "If I may," interrupted Maya, "I think we should complete the repair and verify if the problem has really been solved. Afterward, you can discuss the implications with more clarity." The pragmatic suggestion had the desired effect. Drummond nodded, still visibly irritated, but willing to prioritize the functioning of the car. "Proceed," he ordered. "I want to see with my own eyes if this story of a non-original component makes sense." The following minutes were of intense and silent work. Maya finalized the last connections, while Isabella, now under her father's watchful eye, limited herself to observing and occasionally passing tools when requested. Robert supervised everything, divided between technical professionalism and the tension of the moment. Finally, it was time for the test. The car was repositioned on the dynamometer, and everyone gathered in the control room. August insisted that one of his most experienced mechanics conduct the test, a decision that Maya accepted without protest. She handed the keys to the designated technician and joined the others to observe the results on the monitors. The Ferrari's engine roared to life, the characteristic sound echoing through the testing room. On the monitors, the initial parameters showed themselves stable, exactly within the expected specifications. 80 kilometers per hour, 100, 120. The tension was palpable. Drummond leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the digital graphs. August maintained a carefully neutral expression, but his fingers drummed nervously against the side of his leg. Robert discreetly bit his lower lip. 160, 180. It was the critical moment, the exact point where the problem always manifested. The seconds seemed to drag while everyone observed, hypnotized, the numbers on the monitor. 200 kilometers per hour. No failure, no hesitation. The engine continued to function perfectly, all parameters stable, all performance curves exactly where they should be. 220. 240. The technician took the car to the maximum speed allowed by the dynamometer, maintaining it for 2 complete minutes. More than enough time for any failure to manifest. Nothing happened. The Ferrari responded as if it had just left the factory in Italy, each component in perfect harmony with the others. When the engine was finally turned off, a silence loaded with meaning filled the room. It was Drummond who broke it, with a low whistle of admiration. "Impressive," he said, addressing Maya directly. "In less than a day, you solved what others couldn't in weeks." Before Maya could respond, Isabella stepped forward, ignoring her father's warning look. "Actually, it wasn't just the removal of the illegal chip," she said with surprising confidence. "It was the entire readjustment of the electronic system to compensate for the previous modifications. Maya had to manually recalibrate several parameters that had been altered." Drummond turned his attention to the teenager, raising his eyebrows. "And you are—" "My daughter," August quickly intervened. "Isabella was just observing the process as part of her interest in engineering." "Very technical interest for an observer," commented Drummond with an almost smile. Turning to Maya, he continued, "So besides removing this chip, you had to recalibrate the entire system?" "Ah, yes," confirmed Maya. "The chip had permanently altered some parameters of the onboard computer. It wasn't enough to remove it. It was necessary to restore the original settings, which required precision work." "And are you sure that now everything is according to factory specifications? No performance losses?" "Absolutely," replied Maya. "In fact, the car should present better fuel economy and greater durability in the long term compared to how it was with the unauthorized chip." Drummond turned to August, his expression now calculatedly neutral. "Mitchell, I think we have matters to discuss in your office. Privately." August nodded, tense. "Of course. Robert, please finalize here and prepare the car for delivery. Mr. Drummond, this way." While the two men withdrew, an uncomfortable silence fell over those who remained. Robert seemed divided between relief at the technical success and concern about the repercussions that would certainly come. The mechanics exchanged significant looks, aware they were witnessing something that transcended the simple repair of a vehicle. "You knew from the beginning, didn't you?" asked Isabella to Maya in a low voice, taking advantage that Robert had walked away to guide the team on finalizing the service. "I suspected," admitted Maya. "There are certain failure patterns that are characteristic of unauthorized modifications, but I wasn't sure until I saw the chip with my own eyes." "And William, do you think he—" "I don't have concrete proof," interrupted Maya, cautious, "but the coincidence is too strong to ignore. The question is, did he act alone or were there others involved?" Isabella bit her lip, hesitant. "There's something you should know," she finally said. "Something I overheard by chance weeks ago when William still worked here." Maya leaned slightly, intrigued. "What did you hear?" "A conversation between him and a man I had never seen before. They were discussing special optimization for selected clients. William was saying it was impossible to do without problems eventually appearing, but the other insisted that the profit compensated for the risk." "And you told this to anyone?" Isabella shook her head. "I tried to talk to my dad, but he said I was imagining things, that it was just a normal technical conversation that I didn't understand because I was a layperson." The bitterness in her voice was evident. The irony is that I understood perfectly. They were talking about illegally modifying cars to sell for higher prices, claiming exclusive specifications. Maya absorbed the information in silence. If what Isabella was saying was true, and she had no reason to doubt, the scheme could be bigger and more organized than it initially appeared. Not just a dishonest employee, but a structured operation, possibly with external connections. "I think your father is going to face a storm in the coming days," commented Maya, looking in the direction of the office where August and Drummond were talking. "He'll survive," replied Isabella, with a mixture of resignation and certainty. "He always does. The question is, at what cost?" Before they could continue the conversation, Robert approached again. "Maya, August asked that you wait. He wants to speak with you when he finishes with Drummond." The manager's tone suggested that conversation could go in several different directions, not all pleasant. "No problem," replied Maya. "I'll take the opportunity to organize my tools." While arranging her equipment, Maya reflected on the events of the last 24 hours. What had begun as a humiliating challenge had transformed into something much larger and potentially more significant than anyone could have predicted. It wasn't just about fixing a car or proving her competence. It was about integrity, truth, and the consequences of morally questionable choices. And perhaps more importantly, it was about a talented young woman whose passion for mechanics could be suffocated before even fully blossoming. Looking at Isabella, who was now discreetly helping in organizing the tools, Maya recognized the importance of that moment in the teenager's life. A turning point, perhaps, where the right support could make all the difference. The rain continued to fall outside, washing the city, creating that peculiar atmosphere that only Chicago knows, a mixture of chaos and renewal, of challenge and opportunity. Somehow it seemed appropriate. Storms, after all, have the power to clear the air, to reveal truths, to create new paths where before there was only routine. And while waiting to face what would come next, Maya had the strange certainty that, regardless of the outcome of the conversation with August, something fundamental had changed. For her, for Isabella, and perhaps for Premium Motors as a whole. The meeting between August and Drummond lasted almost an hour. From the garage, Maya and Isabella could occasionally hear raised voices, although the specific words weren't discernible through the walls of the office. The dealership employees kept themselves busy, pretending normalcy, but the climate of tension was undeniable. No one knew exactly what was being discussed, but everyone felt that important decisions were being made. When finally the office door opened, Drummond came out first, his face composed in a neutral and professional expression. He stopped briefly in the garage, approaching Maya. "I would like to thank you personally," he said, extending his hand, "not just for the repair, but for the honesty. Not everyone would have the courage to reveal what you revealed." Maya accepted. The handshake, surprised by the recognition. "I just did my job," she replied with simplicity. "It's rarely just that," commented Drummond, with a significant look. Then, turning to Isabella, he added, "And congratulations on the technical assistance. Impressive for someone your age." The compliment made the teenager blush slightly, but her smile was radiant. "Thank you, sir." Drummond said goodbye with a brief wave and left, accompanied by Robert to the main door. The moment he disappeared, August appeared in the doorway of the office. "Maya, can we talk now?" he called, his tone neutral, impossible to decipher. Isabella gave Maya a concerned look, but she smiled reassuringly. "Everything will be fine," she murmured, before following August to the office. The environment was exactly what one would expect from the owner of a luxury dealership. Sober but elegant decoration, dark wood furniture, discreet display cases exhibiting miniatures of classic cars. On the walls, framed photographs showed August alongside celebrities and important figures, always with spectacular cars as the backdrop. "Please sit down," he indicated, pointing to a chair in front of his imposing desk. Maya obeyed, maintaining an upright posture and direct gaze. She didn't know what to expect, but she was determined to face whatever came with dignity. August sat on the other side, joined his hands on the desk, and took a deep breath, like someone preparing for a difficult conversation. "First, I must admit that I underestimated you," he began. "The challenge I proposed wasn't unfair. It was, in fact, conceived to be impossible to fulfill in the established deadline." "I imagined," replied Maya without resentment, "and yet you not only accepted, but exceeded all expectations." August paused, studying her with new interest. "Why? Why submit to an obviously biased test?" Maya considered the question for a moment. "Because some battles need to be fought, even when the odds are against you," she finally replied. "Because each time one of us steps back, we reinforce the stereotype that we don't belong in certain spaces." August nodded slowly, as if really considering her words. "Drummond is furious would be an understatement," he continued, slightly changing the subject. "Apparently, he paid a considerable premium for a car that was tampered with without his knowledge, a car that my company certified as original. And what happens now? Legally, it could be a disaster. Drummond has enough influence to cause significant damage to Premium Motors' reputation, not to mention possible lawsuits." August paused, drumming his fingers on the desk. "But he's also a pragmatic man. I offered compensation for the trouble, and more importantly, a guarantee that those responsible will be identified and punished." "William Taylor," concluded. "Maya." "Among others, probably," agreed August. "The evidence points to a broader scheme. Taylor may be just the visible tip of the iceberg." "Your daughter mentioned something about a conversation she overheard." August frowned. "Isabella, what does she have to do with this?" "She heard Taylor discussing with someone about special optimizations for selected clients. She tried to tell you, but I didn't pay attention," completed August, the painful understanding stamped on his face. "I thought it was just teenage curiosity, misinterpretations of technical terms." A heavy silence settled between them. August seemed lost in thought, perhaps re-examining past interactions with his daughter in a new light. "She has talent, you know," said Maya softly. "Genuine talent, the kind of mechanical intuition that can't be taught." August raised his eyes, a mixture of pride and apprehension in his expression. "I know," he admitted almost in a whisper. "I always knew, actually. Since she was little, she would take apart her toys to see how they worked. At 10, she fixed the kitchen blender by herself." A reluctant smile formed on his lips. "Christina, my wife, wanted to encourage her. I hesitated." "Why?" The question hung in the air for a few seconds before August replied. "Fear, I suppose. I know this world, its harshness, its prejudices. I wanted to protect her, direct her to paths more welcoming for a woman. Paths that you chose, not her," observed Maya without accusation in her voice, just a statement. "Yes," agreed August, surprising her with his frankness. "In the name of protection, perhaps I suffocated something precious." Another silence, more reflective than tense. "You know," continued August after a few moments, "when I opened this dealership, I promised myself that it would be different from the places where I worked. More ethical, more fair, more human." He looked around at the luxurious office, the photographs, the symbols of success. "At some point, I lost my way. I let status, prestige, become more important than principles." Maya didn't respond, allowing him to follow his own flow of thoughts. "What happened with Drummond isn't an isolated incident," confessed August. "It's the symptom of a culture that I allowed to develop here, a culture where results and appearances matter more than integrity." "There's still time to change that," offered Maya. August studied her for a long moment, as if seeing her really for the first time. "Yes, I think so." He straightened in his chair, his expression now more determined. "And that's why I want to make you a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" "A position here. Technical supervisor, responsible for ensuring that all services rigorously follow quality and ethical standards. No shortcuts, no special optimizations." The offer completely surprised Maya. Of all the possibilities she had imagined for that conversation, a job offer was the last she would have expected. "Why?" she asked, genuinely intrigued. "Just yesterday you saw me as an intruder, someone who didn't belong in this environment." "And I was wrong," acknowledged August. "Sometimes we need someone from outside to show us where we're failing, someone with a fresh perspective and solid principles." Maya pondered the offer. It was tempting on various levels: financial, stability, professional recognition, the chance to work with cutting-edge technology. But it would also mean abandoning her independence, the freedom to choose her own projects. "Can I think about it?" she finally asked. "Of course," agreed August. "Take the time you need. The proposal remains open." He opened a drawer and took out an envelope, placing it on the desk. Meanwhile, as promised, the amount agreed for the challenge plus a bonus for the exceptional service. Maya accepted the envelope with a nod of thanks. "And the part I originally came to get? It's already set aside. Robert will take care of it." The conversation seemed concluded, but before Maya stood up, August added, "There's one more thing I'd like to discuss." "Yes?" "Isabella." He paused, choosing his words. "She clearly has talent, as you said, and genuine interest. But she's also young, impressionable, still discovering her path." "What are you suggesting?" "Mentorship," replied August. "Professional guidance from someone who has walked a similar path, someone who can show her both the possibilities and the real challenges of a technical career." Maya raised her eyebrows. "Are you asking me to be your daughter's mentor?" "I'm asking if you would consider it," corrected August. "Perhaps weekly meetings to start, supervised projects, reading recommendations, that sort of thing." The idea wasn't unpleasant. In fact, Maya had already thought of something similar, impressed with Isabella's potential. And if she decides to follow another path, something completely different from engineering or mechanics, then she will have made an informed decision, not based on fantasies or impositions, replied August. "All I ask is that she has the chance to explore her options with proper guidance." Maya nodded, satisfied with the answer. "In that case, it would be my pleasure, but with one condition." "Which is?" "That it be her decision. I don't want to be imposed as a mandatory tutor. If Isabella isn't interested, I completely respect that." A genuine smile illuminated August's face. "Fair," he agreed. "And knowing my daughter, she'll be more than enthusiastic." With that, both stood up. The conversation had taken unexpected turns, transforming a challenge conceived as humiliation into an opportunity for change, for Maya, for Isabella, for Premium Motors itself. As they left the office, they found Isabella anxiously waiting, pretending to be busy with a technical catalogue. Her eyes immediately darted to them, trying to decipher the result of the conversation from their expressions. "Let's get a coffee," August suggested to his daughter, with an unusual softness in his voice. "I think we have a lot to talk about." "Regarding your future?" Isabella's eyes widened in surprise, quickly alternating between her father and Maya, who smiled encouragingly. "About Engineering? She asked, cautious, as if fearing it was some kind of trap. About possibilities, corrected August. Including, yes, mechanical engineering, if that's what you really want to explore. Isabella's face lit up with a radiant smile, incredulity giving way to hope. Seriously? You're not going to keep insisting on Harvard and law? We'll discuss all options, promised August. With an open mind, Isabella's expression was worth more than any financial reward, thought Maya. It was the look of someone whose horizon had just infinitely expanded. 3 months later, Premium Motors was different, not just in appearance, although there were visible changes, such as the new technical transparency sector, where clients could follow the services performed in detail, but mainly in the atmosphere, in the internal culture. Maya had accepted August's proposal with some negotiated conditions. She worked 4 days a week at the dealership, reserving 1 day for her independent projects and for the formal mentorship of Isabella, which now included not just the teenager, but also 2 other young women interested in technical careers. The ET mentorship program, initially conceived as a private agreement, had transformed into a structured initiative, with institutional support from Premium Motors and partnerships with technical schools in the region. Women in Mechanics, they now called it, and there was already a waiting list for the next semester. On that particular afternoon, the project occupying the attention of Maya and her apprentices was especially significant: the restoration of a 1976 Dodge Dart, found in a junkyard in the north side, acquired for a fraction of its potential value. "Be careful with that connector," instructed Maya, observing while Isabella worked delicately on the electrical system. "It's old and fragile. We need to preserve as much as possible of the original components." Isabella nodded, concentrated, her fingers moving with surprising precision for someone her age. At her side, Jessica and Marina, the other participants in the program, observed attentively, absorbing every detail, every instruction. "When we finish, can we take it to the classic car meet next month?" asked Isabella, without taking her eyes off the work. "If we maintain the schedule, yes," replied Maya. "It will be the official debut of our team." A smile of pride crossed the faces of the 3 young women. The idea of exhibiting their work at a public event, alongside experienced restorers, was as intimidating as it was exciting. From the door of the special garage, now exclusively designated for the mentorship program, August observed the scene with an expression that mixed pride and a hint of melancholy. Isabella's transformation in the last few months was remarkable, not just in her technical abilities, which bloomed each day, but mainly in her confidence, her certainty of purpose. "They're doing well," commented Robert, who had discreetly approached. "Better than I expected," admitted August. "Isabella has a natural talent that I almost suffocated." "The important thing is that now she has space to develop that talent," observed Robert diplomatically. August nodded, grateful for the positive perspective. "The dealership is also better," continued the manager. "The new transparency policies are attracting a different profile of client, more technically demanding, less impressed with superficialities." It was true. After the scandal involving William Taylor, who now faced lawsuits for fraud, and the subsequent internal restructuring, Premium Motors had repositioned itself in the market, no longer just as a status symbol, but as a reference in technical integrity and transparency. Paradoxically, this had attracted an even more select clientele, those who truly understood and valued precision automotive engineering. "Maya was the best hire we've made in years," acknowledged August, even if it began in the most unlikely way possible. Inside the garage, oblivious to the conversation, Maya and her apprentices remained absorbed in their work. There was a special harmony in that small group, a synergy that transcended the simple transmission of technical knowledge. It was about belonging, shared purpose, the joy of building something meaningful with one's own hands. For Maya, the path to this point had been long and frequently lonely. How many closed doors, how many disdainful looks, how many invisible but concrete barriers. And now, in guiding these young women, she felt she was completing a cycle, transforming her own struggle into a positive legacy. While adjusting a particularly delicate piece of the Dodge's engine, Maya remembered the day she first entered Premium Motors, the marks her worn boots left on the impeccable floor, the muffled laughter, the provocation that intended to humiliate her. How unpredictable life was, she thought, transforming obstacles into opportunities, adversaries into allies. "I think we've got it," announced Isabella, stepping back to observe her work. "The electrical system is reconnected, following exactly the original diagram." Maya approached to verify, analyzing each connection with a critical eye. "Perfect," she approved, with a smile of satisfaction. "Exactly as it should be." The four exchanged looks of complicity and shared pride. In that moment, they weren't just a mentor and her apprentices, they were pioneers, each in her own way, opening paths that others could follow. And while the IDE afternoon Chicago sun cast golden reflections through the garage windows, illuminating the partially restored Dodge Dart, Maya had the certainty that this story, her story, Isabella's story, the story of all women who